Our Vikings coverage continues here in Indianapolis at the 2025 NFL Combine. I am alongside our Senior VP of Player Personnel, Ryan Grigson. And this is Combine number...
I think 26.
26 for you.
Yeah.
I know, it's kind of like, this is fun for you. Like, your background's in scouting. This is kind of like where it all started after your playing career, right?
Yeah, it's kind of old hat, but it gets a little bit different every year. There's more things added. I think it's a really good process. I think they pack everything in. You're not here too long. I felt like we used to be here a lot longer. When I worked for the Combine, we would come a week prior.
Oh, wow.
And, turn on the lights in the RCA Dome and fold socks and do all these types of things that made me appreciate now. But it's a great week just to get to know the players and just have them in front of our coaches, our coordinators, and just to get a really good feel for – because I sometimes just even notice, like, if a guy is really gelling with the room, if he's locking eyes with, like, Brian Flores, like he's not intimidated, like – it really, kind of finding that place with KO, and you can see the kind of the synergy happening. Like, I take note of those things. I think they mean something.
Yeah, it seems like that stuff matters, and maybe not as many people go to the Combine anymore. But it seems like that's something that you don't really see as a deterrent. Why is that?
Well, I think it's now you also have coaches and so many high-level personnel people and GMs going to the East, West, and the Senior Bowl. So you get that kind of piece out of the way to where you're going to get to interview a lot of the guys already. You're going to be able to see them in pads, compete, and that's another piece. And then you kind of have this as a cherry on top with all the testing, the medical. Medical's huge. Because, again, like you might love a guy and you want to take him in the first round, then all of a sudden you find out all these things he has wrong with him, and all of a sudden that affects his value on draft day. So sometimes it's actually exciting because you maybe get a player that you never thought you'd get because our docs are like, no, I think he's going to be okay, or vice versa. Sometimes he's off your board. So that makes it tough. But I think that it evolves, and every team's different, every coach is different, every GM's different of what they feel like they need, and I think it's on them to say, I don't need this piece, I need this piece, and they take what they think they need, and away you go.
So now that we're heading into your fourth year here in Minnesota, wow, crazy to say, I'm sure. How has your role evolved over the last few seasons?
I think it comes down to trust and getting to know people and getting to have really good conversations, and even sometimes they're not combative, but they're like, you want to be able to express how you feel about a player. And I think it's good just getting to know somebody because you're just more comfortable expressing yourself. And, Kwesi makes sure that KO's very open. He likes to hear people's opinions. He's super smart. He's got a PhD in football, and you all know how smart Kwesi is. So they pay you for your opinion. So I try to push the guys when they have that space to make sure that they can express themselves because you've done the work. Even as an area scout, like you've been away from your family for countless weeks and missed birthdays, and like now's your time. Now's your time to shine. Like, give us your best. Like, let us know who you like. And that conviction piece is really big because it's lasting with KO and Kwesi. Like, KO will say something in a meeting like, "Oh, I remember you liked this guy," and then he's listening, and that's great because the decision makers, they're only as good as the people around them because they can't do everything. So we're also important from the entry-level scout because they're all involved in the process. So if they have something that's good to give, that's a significant piece, it could end up being the difference, in the process. So I think it's just the openness of our head coach and GM to be open, because I've been in places where it's very closed in. It's only like a handful of people having those conversations. I like our approach because, a good idea can come from anywhere.
Yeah, it feels like you are feeling empowered to want to lift up your guys in front of the room, and that's an important factor into what your job does. When did it kind of hit you that you had that type of, I guess, mentorship or the ability to lead?
Well, I think it's what Kwesi initially said he brought me here for, because I have done every job from the entry level all the way to general manager after I've gotten this job. And so I can identify with those people. I can identify with the struggles they have. I feel like I can also push them in areas that I maybe feel like they're not as strong in based on my experience and places of weakness that I have. And so I think it's good to just let them know where they stand all the time, let them know how they can get better, having just real open conversations. I feel like that's the only way you get better. The only way for growth is by having honest conversations. And I think that I always feel like with players, even with departments, like this 3-year horizon Kwesi always talks about is real. Like I feel like we're in a great place now because of the time we've spent together understanding what Kwesi wants, understanding what KO wants, knowing like the nuance that they want in each position. Like that's so huge to be able to identify that and get them what they want. That's our job, is to bring them a menu of players. And sometimes we try to be optimistic because we want that pool to be, big enough to where they can decide. If we got player A and player B and they're the same place on the board, like let the decision maker pick it, because that's the person that's, they're the ones with their jobs on the line, like we all have. So I think it's really come along well, and I think it's been really stressed by Kwesi and KO to make sure that say what you believe and provide the evidence. Kwesi's huge on providing evidence, and I think it's hard if you state your case. And we have, before the draft, we have scouts that we do presentations on guys that we think should be higher. They could be a free agent that they think should be on the draft board. They could be a guy that we see as a day 3 guy they feel is a second day guy. And through that conviction and the evidence that they put on the screen, it gets people to be what Kwesi calls it Bayesian. It's being open-minded, to not be biased to your original thought, and being able to say, oh, okay, well, maybe I overlooked this. So that it lends to better decision-making.
How much of that process has played into your success with undrafted free agents?
I think that's a credit to our scouts, because a lot of times the GM and even myself, we can't get that far down the board just because from a time perspective, from meeting and the rigors of the season. And they've seen this guy maybe for 3 years with the COVID guys returning and the extra years of eligibility and all of that, all those kinds of things. So they give us the names, and then if they have conviction, like Levi Drake, for example, like if I'm walking down the hall and 3 scouts are accosting me about somebody, I love that, because then I'm going to say, I'm watching this guy now. Darn it, I'm going to put my lunch aside and I'm going to watch this guy right now. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I see it. And then I'll go to Kwesi. Hey, you need to watch this guy. And I think that's the essence of every great department, is surfacing talent that maybe other people aren't maybe doing the full scope of the work on, because it has to get in front of the decision makers for that player to be a real, a guy on draft day for you.
Kevin and Kwesi have talked about how they want to improve the interior offensive line this offseason. How do you see that playing out?
Well, I think you're only as capable of doing that as who's there when you're picking and how many picks you have. And, we don't have many picks right now, but there's plenty of players, as the league has shown, that can be mined in the later rounds. And there's a lot of great players. Now, of course, we'd all like to take them in one because there's less margin for error. But as long as your process is thorough and our O-line coach feels like this player is an arrow up player and not just arrow flat or arrow down and has traits, the offensive line is a place where you can usually find players later that end up becoming winning level starters. So I'm optimistic. I feel like it's a good group. There's plenty of interior O-line. I've seen a school this year where I would draft all 3 interior players for us. So, and that's, those are the games I want to have Kwesi go to with me live, before like an NFL game. And we try to do that sometimes. Because if you can see three potential starters at once, that's a great thing. So that just shows you there's some depth in this class.
As a former NFL offensive lineman, what do you look for when you're scouting an interior offensive lineman?
Size. Size is key. It depends on the system you're in, of course. But as you find out, like the way this league is going, they not only have to be big, but they have to be able to move. And you see it quick because the matchups are real. And these guys are getting more and more athletic, the guys that are playing against them in the interior across the ball from them. And so like we have to be able to win late in the down. That usually has to do with 2 things. Being able to strain and compete until the whistle blows. And then technique to live through that down. And then also the athleticism and the reactionary quickness to be able to handle these monsters they're playing against. So working them out, the numbers, the analytics, like you try to find those best players that you think are going to be those types of players, because the way this league is, the best teams have really good offensive lines. Kwesi knows that, KO knows that, and I think, and lastly, as a player, like there's a lot you can overcome too with great technique and the want to strain and to compete and to finish. And I think that mindset and mentality is what makes good offensive lines great. It's not even the physical ability. It's because there's plenty of players that go to the Hall of Fame that were day 3 picks or even college free agents. And a lot of times it comes down to the technique and want to to finish and to play at a high level of competitiveness that gets those players in that upper echelon.
Pete Bursich wanted me to make sure I asked you about blue feet. If you liked the blue feet when you're evaluating.
I was, and it's something that always stuck with me.
Yeah.
Charlie Army was my first boss in St. Louis when we were the greatest show on turf. And he had always said, like, because sometimes I would get too caught up in how a player looked physically. And because I was always, like, big on, like, you know, if this guy doesn't like the weight room, like, I'm like, how can he be a good player? He doesn't means he doesn't work and this and that. Well, some guys are just supremely talented, and it's never something they have to do. And it took me a while because I wasn't one of those guys, so I was probably biased in that way. But as I learned, a lot of times it doesn't even matter what a guy looks like on the hoof. If he has blue feet, which means elite footwork, like I've used the word Fred Astaire, and I don't think a lot of people know who that is.
The dancer?
Yes. Like you have to have, like I would say Michael Jackson now because that
Sure.
would be more relatable to people.
That's fair.
But just great feet and movement skills to where it's effortless. Like Christian Darrisaw, excuse me, he has blue feet, and that's something that usually we even have guys in the practice squad that fit that criteria that I'm really excited about. That once you put on the film, no matter how big they are, how they look physically, you just see these feet and they show up and they hit you in the face because they just move differently than everyone else around them. So that allows them to put their bodies in positions others can't, which at those positions on the edges or in the interior, you want guys that are be able to move their feet, like they can roll out of bed and move.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not trained. Like that's something that God gave them. So more guys you get like that, the less margin for error you have because they can move the 300 pounds to 330 pounds quicker than the other guy. It's pretty simple.
Right. Okay. Well, who was one of the practice squad guys? I want to know.
Well, okay. Well, Leroy Watson and
Okay.
Kwesi would have be smiling right now because he was a former tight end.
Okay.
At Texas San Antonio that came in the league at 280 pounds, had only played tight end in college, and then was on San Francisco's practice squad. And we saw him in the preseason, and his feet just, I'm like, wow, like those are blue feet.
Cool.
And so now he's 340 pounds. Like so
Wow.
now he has a requisite size. Those blue feet got him on the field, and he started games for the Titans last year. He has a lot of work to do, but he has that foundation of great movement skills, long arms, size now, and he plays with tempo. So excited about guys like that because those are players that anybody else could have had, but if we can identify the footwork first and foremost and those other things that we feel like are arrow up, then you might hit on a guy that you didn't have to take in one.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love it. I love when you get value whenever you can around the league, right?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Grigson.
Tatum.
We appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
And have a great combine. I mean,
Yeah.
this is going to be a fun week for you.
Yeah, we got some eating to do around here.